Yeah, there's this really funny video called the Argentine Intervention. All right, give me just a second and then we'll let more people jump on the line. But everyone who's on, let us know where you're calling in from. Who do you like more, Maradona or Pele? And, maybe your opinions on Messi. But there's a really funny video that I'm going to drop in the chat. It is called the Argentinian Intervention. I think I literally just said that same exact thing. But, and it's very funny. And Argentinians are very proud of their. Sorry, it's really loud. I'll drop that right in the chat.
I wonder if I can see. Oh, I see the chat. Okay.
And then Bridget, just so you know as well, I'll take care of the chat. So if people start writing in, don't worry about.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Overwhelming. Yes, okay. No, it can get very overwhelming.
Good. I'm glad you said that.
Oh yeah, no, okay, close that. Perfect. And then I am just going to share my screen and we'll get started in just another minute. But the video is very funny and I think it perfectly sums up, maybe not perfectly, but it's a good summation of Argentinians and they're very proud of their culture. And I think what's most striking and a little bit funny as well is that Argentinians do not consider themselves Latino, the majority. Well, I don't want to speak for a general population, right? But they feel a certain way about the Argentine culture as compared to other countries because of that European influence that they have and so many immigrants that came here from Italy. And like you were saying, Sean.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. They don't consider themselves Latino. It's very funny. They're more European than Latino, if anything else.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Oh, yeah, it's so funny. Perfect.
How many people registered? Do you know?
Yeah, so we had, the last time I checked, we had 57 people registered. So we tend to have a 45 to 55% attrition rate, and I think that's the right word. And so then also everyone will get the recording afterwards. So they will be able to view that as well. And you'll see that people come and go. So whatever the number is, it's not always representative because like afterwards, Zoom will tell you how many people were actually on because, people join and then people leave. But
right. Okay. How many people do you normally get? What's the norm?
I mean, so recently we've had our averages have been about 44 people, depending on the topic, depending on the chat. Perfect. Okay. And so with that, I'm going to hit record and we are going to get started. And I'm really excited to have everyone here today. I'm really excited to be back. Perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Bridget, who is a PowerToFly mentor. And in just a second, I will hand the mic over to her for an introduction. But, I want to say welcome, whether this is your first chat, whether this is your 50th. We really appreciate you being here. We love seeing you, turning on your cameras, coming off of mute, really engaging in the chat. You make everything we do very worth it. And so I'm really happy to be here. And after a little bit of an absence, I'm also happy to be back and hosting and talking about such an awesome topic. And so with that, just a couple of housekeeping rules. I just want to let you know that one, we are live streaming to YouTube. So if you are worried about anything related to privacy, the only way that you would show up on YouTube is if you do come off of mute and come off of your camera. Otherwise, on YouTube, you can only see myself and Bridget as we talk. So just want to throw that out there. And then, we are recording this, so you will get a email afterwards with the link to the recording so you can rewatch, share it. And, with that, don't worry about taking notes because you can always come back and rewatch it. We want you to really be engaged here and ask your questions and get them answered. I've got some pre-submitted questions, but I am more than happy to, hand the reins over to everyone else on the line and let you come off of mute and get your questions answered in this 30 minutes that we have. And so thank you. And if at any point you want to write in the chat box and you don't want to write to everyone, you can write to me privately and I can read your question anonymously. And you can do so by hitting the drop down menu in the chat box and selecting full filter. Perfect. And so with that, I am so excited to welcome and introduce Bridget, who is a PowerToFly mentor, who is a senior manager of talent acquisition and so much more. And so with that, Bridget, I'm going to pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself and kick us off.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Nicole at PowerToFly. I am a senior manager of talent acquisition. I have worked in the branding field for a while. This is where this comes in. I've also worked in PR as well as consumer. So I was a creative recruiter for Pepsi and for Omnicom. So some of the bigger ones, but in any place that you insert yourself as a recruiter, it has to become, even though it's large, it has to become small. So I have to be an extension of the brand of the company that I'm working for. And the folks that I am interviewing for would also need to be an extension of that brand as well. So with that, and I'm not going to go into it right now, but I think, what we're going to cover, hopefully what we're going to cover a lot of in this talk is, what is the company's core values? What is their value proposition? And when you think about that, think about what are your own core values? What is your own value proposition? And see if those two align. So it's doing a lot of homework before you have these interviews, but it's also doing homework on yourself as well. Lastly, I just want to also say, in addition to recruiting, I've been doing it for 15 years, and I absolutely love it. But I also am a storyteller, a live storyteller. If anyone knows of the Moth, I've also done improv, and I am a podcaster. So I like talking and getting to know people. Those are my two passions.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you'll have to share that, the podcast with me afterwards. So we can spread that to the community and everyone else who's on the line.
Happily.
And so, there's a couple really interesting themes here. And one of the things that I wanted to start with in this conversation is about, those values and those things that you mentioned, and how you can relate the two between what you're working on and what the company is working on, and how can you sort of brand yourself to move into a company or maybe move into a role that you're interested in getting.
Okay, that's a good question. I feel like we have to always be researching and evolving. We can never stay stagnant. So an example of that would be, okay, so for instance, the two things that I think that we utilize the most, that are going to have the most effect, will be your resume and your LinkedIn account. So your resume should really mirror your LinkedIn. Now, the difference between your resume is it's a list of your skill sets, right? So as a recruiter, we're going to look, and we see thousands upon thousands upon thousands of resumes. So if we're looking at a resume for a role that we had posted and this person has applied to it, and that could be anywhere from, say, a strategy role, content role, creative director role. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a creative to follow this chat, but you do have to stand out, right? So if the job description has a key list of what they're looking for, and then in turn you have a resume that matches a lot of those, that's fantastic. But that's surface level, right? So that's getting the interview, or at least it's getting the recruiter's eye. We're looking at the titles, the companies, because we're going to look at competitors. We're going to look at competitive companies, and we'll look at schools. Sometimes that makes a difference. Sometimes it doesn't. Really depends on the company. But ultimately, think about, and I know this sounds odd, but I do look at the stuff at the bottom. The stuff at the bottom to me is hobbies and interests. I love that. That is probably my favorite part of a resume. And a lot of people leave that off. And it's a shame, because that's where your personality comes in. It could, and I've seen everything ranging from, sailing to teaching sailing, to sushi making, to Korean film. If those are the things that your interests, or those are your interests, and you're going for an IT role, that's great. I need to know who this person is outside of the resume. So those types of things. And I hope that answered your question. I just kind of wanted to give like an overall base to, and again, your core values will be in there, not just under interests, but even on my own LinkedIn, my bio will say right off the bat, it says I'm entrepreneurial in spirit. I'm collaborative by nature. I'm curious by nature. Those three things alone, I have had people reach out to me, and this is when I'm already working. So I'm already happily secured with employed. But then you have recruiters doing a lot of passive searches, and they'll do the keywords. They'll do a lot of keywords, but when they come across, you're already putting your kind of personal or your attributes on there, they have to do less of the work. So that's your key thing. You want to make sure that you're doing most of the work and they have to do very little on their end, and you have to stand out. Like, what is your special sauce? Okay, so you were a strategist for 15 years and moved up the strategy chain into a VP level. Okay, that's great. That is great. That's a huge accomplishment, but I'm going to need a little bit more to see if you would be a fit with the particular company that I'm recruiting for. And we could talk more about this, but there's other ways around it. But I definitely need to see a sliver of who's the who in you, as opposed to the other 30 resumes I just looked at in 1 hour or less with the same skill set. So basically, you're opening a window and a door to conversation, connecting with someone. What if the other person that's reading this knows that the hiring manager also loves, film? That could be a starter, but it's also a great way for recruiters to open up a conversation, as opposed to like, hey, tell me about your successes, or I've seen that you've done this for 5 years and you moved on to this, or you switched from this department to that department. We'll get there, but it's also a great way as an opener. It's a human opener to have a conversation about someone's interest, even their address has been an opener for me. If I see someone lives in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, and I did too, right off the bat, we could talk about that. It puts us both at ease. We can laugh a bit, and then we can go into the interview, and then we'll remember something after that interview other than just the skill set.
I love this. It's so important. And, we had a question come in anonymously about hobbies and interests. And actually, Lucic is about to come off of mute and ask about this particular aspect of your resume.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hi, Bridget. So my question is actually about resume and branding. So I feel like my LinkedIn does a pretty good job of showing my personality and what my brand is all about, but I feel like my resume does not. And it's just pretty much like a resume.
Okay.
So the jobs that I'm applying for are more on DI or public interest roles. So I just want to figure out how to inject more personality or more of branding into my resume. And you're touching a little bit on that around interests. But thinking around the roles that I'm going for, do you have any suggestions on how to approach specifically resume to put more of me into it?
So with the resume, first of all, I also want to say right off the bat, visually, aesthetically, the resume it has to be up to date in the sense that most of them are on, InDesign. Okay, mine's not on InDesign because I'm not very visually creative in that sense. But, I look at different formats and templates that are available online. And you can just a lot of these templates will pull from your LinkedIn and then put it into some sort of InDesign format. So I think visually that's important because it has to appear up to date. And I have 15 years of experience. So my concern is I don't look that up to date because I've been in the field for a long time, but you have to constantly be looking at that. And then when you look at the format of these resume and templates that are online, you'll have it'll say an intro. That's a lot where your brand can come in. And then you have your work experience, and then you have your education. So outside of, let's remove hobbies and interests for a minute, and we look at education. Both on my resume and my LinkedIn, it'll say my graduate school, undergrad, and then there's things that I don't think are important, but are. So I put, this I do think is important. I put PowerToFly mentor on there. That's great. I want people to know that this is something I'm passionate about, which is mentoring. that might resonate with someone that's looking at my resume and say, okay, that means she enjoys growth and development. So that means she'll probably want to lead a team, and she enjoys that type of a situation. Another thing you could put on there, any other courses that you've taken over time. I've taken courses on this downtime of the pandemic. I just took learning and development. That's not something that was my strength, but I went ahead, I spent the $20 for it, and now I have a certificate in it. That is now on my resume. Those tiny little courses or anything that you do, put those on there. If there's anything that you blogged about or wrote about or any publications, put a link to it. Basically, an employer wants to see what you're doing outside of your day-to-day role. You have to be passionate about something outside of your role. And does that should I stop there? Because I've got a little bit more to say on the LinkedIn side of that. Now,
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question around
sure.
that? So one around taking courses. So I've taken way too many courses to name them.
Okay.
So I don't know how to, I wouldn't even know how to start. But as
Okay.
far as it comes to publications, do you think articles on LinkedIn are worth naming?
100%. Yeah. I've written a couple of pieces and that I posted on LinkedIn and had people reach out to me for that reason. So absolutely utilize LinkedIn. You don't have to have a published piece in a digital magazine or any of these types of things. The fact that you're showing interest in something that you do, that you're passionate about, and then posting it and helping others by reading it. You could even make a page called, I think it's the platform's called Medium. Any writer of any degree can have that, and you can go back to your link to Medium. So different things like that. If you have too many courses, don't overload your resume with too many courses, because then it looks like you're all over the place and not focused. Choose the course that resonates with you the most, or the one that you want to attract the right company. That's the one that you should probably be putting on there. So edit it down to what your main focus is now. And I think learned this mostly through when I was recruiting creative directors and art directors. They would show me their portfolio, and there'd be so much. And I would be like, some of this stuff is so dated, it doesn't even apply or resonate right now. So even if you have like 4 great, beautiful projects, show those. I don't care about the stuff that you did when you started or anything that you were employed for, if it doesn't really, reflect who you are or your type of work. So think about those things too. You have to start really editing those things out.
Okay, thank you.
I think I want to jump onto LinkedIn from what I'm saying about the resume, like what you're listing, like those courses, those extra attributes, capabilities that you have. Another thing that I look at in LinkedIn is, and mostly the folks that I'm recruiting are all passive talent. Most of these folks did not even apply to the role. I'm going through LinkedIn and I'm looking for folks with those keywords. And then I start digging a little bit deeper. I start to look at what groups are they with? What companies are they following? This again means that that you're an active employee. Even when you're happily employed, you should be active in your field. And what I call that is like really active in your community. So a lot of, say, industrial designers, if I'm looking at them and they're not really signed up and part of other industrial design groups, or they're not following any other influences or anything like that, that's fine, but it makes it more interesting when I see people really involved with their community, because what that's telling me is they're looking for advice from others, not advice, but they're looking to constantly learn and grow about, learn more about their industry. So they're active. So I think active is really important on LinkedIn, and we do notice that type of thing. You don't want it to be dormant. I say go in and kind of play around with your LinkedIn page like once a month. I can say something else too about what.
No, that's perfect. And you are giving such good advice. So many things that you're giving me to think about as a passive talent, as you would say,
Yep.
somebody who's not actively looking, but it's things to consider when you're putting yourself out there as a person in the workforce, right? And to be taken seriously, because
Yep.
unfortunately enough, being a ghost in social media days is not a good thing for various purposes. So we had a couple
Right.
of questions come in, and I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for asking these questions. But somebody had asked about putting hobbies and interests on the resume. Should it be titled Hobbies and Interests, or should it be, how should you frame that on your resume?
It's funny. It depends on how creative and how loose you want to be. Working in the creative field, I work with folks that can be a little loose. When I'm working in PR, they cannot be loose. They have to be really buttoned up. So obviously know your audience. So if you want to be creative, I personally just use the word interests. Sometimes for me, crazy would be using the term extras, or things you may want to know about me outside of my resume. Like, you could be really creative in how you word that. Writers have been really creative about that. One time I used my DNA. So like my DNA, and then I just kind of had, some attributes like I'm constantly curious, or I am a people person. Attributes, good listener, those types of things. So I would say just play with it, and so you use any terminology that you want to use, to be honest with you, because again, that is kind of reflecting who you are. And something I've noticed during the pandemic that I've never noticed in my 15 years is people have become so much more human in their LinkedIn. The bios I used to read would say UX, UI designer. I know JavaScript, this, and this. I've worked for so and so corporations. Now it's different. I think people are shedding their skin a bit, and they're saying, I'm a mother of two. I am an avid gardener. And they'll joke, I have a green thumb, but maybe it's not that green, maybe it's lime green. Like, you don't have to necessarily follow that, but it gives you a laugh. This is a really hard time that people are going through. This is a global pandemic, right? So globally, everybody has been a lot more vulnerable. And just, I think now people are really looking at the human side of people, because my thing is, like, you're not just an employee, like, you're an individual. Why do we want you here? Like, you have to be yourself. So don't be afraid to do that. And I'm seeing more of that. And I just had a job interview recently because I was pretty open about that, and we had a good conversation about that. So I think storytelling is a good thing to think about too. Your bio could be like a super fun paragraph, like you're getting the details in there, and you're getting, because your resume already has the specs. But I would say play a little bit, and then show your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, your friends, and kind of get their take on it too. And post that on LinkedIn as your bio as well, because people are, that's a worldwide stage. LinkedIn, your resume is only something someone gets after they look for it or after you apply for something, but LinkedIn that's huge.
And I just want to chime in here, as I started off at PowerToFly in recruiting, and I can say that it's a lot easier when you have the resume right on the LinkedIn, and you can kind of look through it and get that general idea, even before, having to reach out and finding out and, discarding whether or not this person might be a good fit for the role or not. So thank you for bringing that up. And on that same note about resumes, and I've been wondering the same thing, Sean asked that, well, they agreed with you that's important to have hobbies and interests on there, but the issue is not having enough room or space to post those. So, a recommended length for a resume, what does that look like? And they asked, what can I do to work that in my resume without having more than 2 pages?
That's a hard question, because I deal with that all the time. Mine comes to 3 pages, and I can't. So I have to edit it down to 2 pages, no matter what. Don't go beyond 2 pages. The only, that is an ongoing question. That's a really difficult question. You just, again, have to be super, super articulate and edit, and your choice of editing. So an example of that would be, okay, so my resume will say something like VP of Talent Acquisition. Now, I'm not going to repeat how many times that I source, recruit, negotiate salaries. What you can do to condense your resume is, okay, bio, whatever. Then after that, you say, I'm a so and so. I'm a strategist of 15 years in the industry of creative PR, pharmaceutical, health and wellness, startups, fintech. So now you put all your industries in that one sentence. You can do that in one paragraph. So now what you're doing is you're summarizing your entire length of what you do as a professional, and you're gonna be repeating yourself on bullet points if you keep putting that stuff in every single bullet point. So I put it in one chunk. That's what I do. That's who I am. And then in each, say you say PepsiCo, talent acquisition, and then under that, instead of putting those bullet points, you could say something like worked on such accounts as Lay's, Quaker, Gatorade. These are brands within Pepsi. And then you talk about interacted with the research and development team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're breaking down each role to a unique sort of skills that you use just for that company. But put your overarching what you do in that first paragraph, condense it all in there. And then you'll find out you're not going to need that many bullet points. And you also give them room to ask you questions in an interview. And you want to do that. You want to have talking points. I hope that helps a little bit.
Totally. And I see Sean just came off of mute. So Sean, handing the mic over to you.
Thank you. Yes, that did help, Bridget. And I'm wondering if you have a sample of that, you could maybe share with us, maybe now put it up or maybe later.
Probably later. I'm not good
and then I'll go in and update my resume to put in my interests and hobbies to help create that connection.
Yeah, also another thing I do even now, and I do that, and I see so many resumes, but as myself as an employee, I will look at professional resumes. I'll just Google professional resumes, talent acquisition in the public affairs space, and you'll see examples pop up. Some of them look a little too dated at having 15 years experience, and then folks that have like say 1 to 2 years experience, they have the opposite problem of going, oh my God, I don't have enough experience. How do I build out my resume? I just got out of school. How could I even have this experience? I've told young people, even putting something on there like day camp or something like this goes to show that you work with children, you can help shape children. You're probably very easy to be around. That's another story, but you can always build out your own resume with even personal experiences if you're young or if you're new coming into the working world. But same thing, Sean, to your point, is you could also look at those templates at your level. At anyone's level, they should be looking at those. Like you could look at entry level resumes, professional resumes, creative resumes, and they're free and available on there. And I'm happy to post one as well. It's just a little bit hard because the resumes I have are actually people's resumes.
No problem. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And thanks for coming off of mute, everyone. And thank you so much for your questions. I love this. It makes it so much more engaging. Perfect. So Casey had asked, he said, hi, Bridget. We connected a while back when you were at S&G, I think. Wondering to what extent you think it's important to tell a full story of who you are on professional touch points. For example, I'm working on a recreational monosub as a side hustle. I also run a meme social account targeting a female demo. That's their audience. Do you think mention of this would turn off an employer in the brand strategy world if I mentioned them? Is it on a per agency basis?
So I'm trying to understand it. Hello, Casey. I'm like, okay, Siegel and Gale days. I definitely must know this person. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Because it sounds like there's a mem. You were cutting out.
So what I kind of got from it was if, it's
marijuana startup, female audience.
Casey, please chime in here if you feel comfortable. But what I kind of got from it was, should this person bring this up in their professional, if they're applying for a job in their resume, is this something that they should mention? Or Is it, oh, good, they said I'm asking well. Okay, perfect. You know, is this something they should leave out, or is this something they should include when they have any interview or conversation?
Okay. So I think that really is a case by case scenario for sure. How creative you want to be and how much you want to reveal, I think is maybe the question. Um, okay. So I think I just saw from Casey, I know one of them was marijuana startup. Obviously I see nothing wrong with that because that's one of the biggest businesses going right now. And I've actually seen some beautiful branding coming out of that. If a company is uncomfortable with that, then that's probably not a company that you want to work for. So again, but if we're all in a hard spot, so if we have to appeal to a company that's like, hey, maybe we should not include this, then that's okay too. You could also remove it or not include it until you have the interview, get a chance to feel who that recruiter is, who, not even the recruiter, like there's myself, but to get you in the door, the hiring manager may not be as relaxed as I am. But if the hiring manager, if you feel comfortable with this person, you think that you could show them this, I would show them. Secondly, hiring managers know that whether this is and I didn't get into this, a pet project or a personal project, but if it's something that you were, commissioned to do, then you should not be hiding that because you were commissioned to do that. If something is a little bit more, I think there was something about like a feminist or um, mem. I mean, everything that's going on right now with Black Lives Matters and Trans Lives Matters. I think diversity and inclusion is incredibly at the forefront of hiring right now. And again, I think it goes back to shedding yourself. I don't think anyone should be ashamed of anything that they're doing or any projects that they're working on, quite frankly, because you have to this world is definitely changing, and I think for the better, like who we're looking at and why. So I would say I'm one of like I'm confident and I'm going to put forward what I'm going to put forward. But to be honest with you too, Casey, I also the podcasting and storytelling I have removed for a long time because I wanted people to see me as a professional. But then when I thought about it, I am a professional. I podcast and I storytell, but those attributes are really helpful to who I am as a recruiter and how I identify with others and how accepting I am of others and wanting to hear other people's story and not seeing them as just a cog in the wheel or as an employee. This is a person that we're hiring. This person matters. So does the family that they're going home to. And that means their happiness matters. So I think, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you should keep it in there. But again, if we're not, hiring is limited right now too. So if you feel that you want to reveal that later, reveal that later. But I would say case by case. I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, they said it did help, and we got some people dropping that they love the perspective that you shared about working with different companies and everything. And so as we're coming up on time here, Bridget, I want to say thank you and thank you to everyone on the line. But if you had one piece of advice around branding and branding yourself as a professional, although I know it could be hard to pick one piece of advice, but if you had something to leave everyone with today, what would you leave them with?
Oh gosh. I mean, something on there that you feel really positive about and really, what am I trying to say? That you feel positive about, that you're, what am I trying to say? What's the word I'm looking for? Proud of. And it doesn't have to be, when you're interviewing, they'll say, what was your most proud moment? And someone will say, oh, when I, did this with one department and I got the weigh-in and the buy-in of, et cetera. That's great. But other proud moments, when I ask people in an interview, what's the most proud moment? Some will say becoming a father was a proud moment. So inevitably don't be afraid to hide those things. And above all, I think, and I always say this no matter what, at the end of the day, when you're in an interview, the only thing you can't fake or talk yourself through is passion. That's going to come through. So the same thing with your personal brand, your special sauce, put a little something in there that's going to show a little bit of meat of sauciness of who you are. And you'll be amazed of how the dialogue is set, how it starts. And that also goes with your approach, right? So if your overall brand is your resume and your LinkedIn, if you're being kind of quirky, silly, or refined, that's okay, because that's what you're going to be attracting. So I'm just going to end with be yourself and be proud of the accomplishments that you made that maybe have nothing to do with your career, because it's still an extension of who you are and what you're bringing to the table in a company, right? It's all connected. Your professional and your personal life are very connected. So
yes, totally. And
yeah,
especially now
be
more than
you.
ever. Yes, it is more visible, like you said, and we are more vulnerable than ever. And I think it's a really
Absolutely.
great change that's coming to the workplace.
Yeah, human
And-
equity. That's what I say. I mean, human equity. That's what we're doing as companies, is we're hiring people. They're people, right? They're not just employees. So
I love it. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining today. You know, we have tons of events happening, and Bridget is a part of our Power to Fly mentorship program, and you can learn more about that on the Power to Fly website. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. You'll get this recording, and thanks for this awesome conversation, Bridget. I learned a lot, and I am really excited to apply some of these things to my own resume and everything that I've been putting off working on for a while. So thank you, and I hope that everyone has a lovely day and that you can stay safe. Bye.
okay, bye
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, Bridget.
Bye.
It was